Hello and welcome. The time has come for a little update. Bitcoin price action, ladies and gentlemen, presented to you by Cryptopocalypse Now. I'm your host, CR, and we're going to map out our expectations across time frames and see what has happened since the last time when we called a local bottom at 107,000, which resulted in a pump all the way up to 118. In the previous videos, I talked about how 118,500 specifically is a level that would determine if we have a bullish continuation run or not. Now, unfortunately for Bitcoin, we had a clear rejection on the weekly resistance zones based on DSR. With the CPR implementation, we could see how that resistance caused price to fall drastically and potentially triggered the next stage for a bear market. Now, this whole bearish scenario is playing out since our call to the downside, starting at $118,000 Bitcoin price point, and another call for a continuation lower from the 114 point. Now, on this specific price action window here, it was advised a few days ago, if you're part of our Discord, and if you're a part of the platoon, where I sometimes share my thoughts in terms of whether we have an entry or not. And you know, if I have skin in the game, then I have skin in the game. I share my opinion not because I want to be right or looking to be proved wrong by the market, but because I want to set myself up for a trade, for a profitable trade, and I choose to share that with you as well. And so this reversal candle over here, I'm gonna get into the intraday, for the intraday players first, get into that subject. And then we're gonna look at the macro a bit later. But over here, this candle reversal and what followed was a fizzle here. It fizzled out and it kind of went to go sideways. And so I think this is one of the better trades that we have had recently, which is an example of a no trade. I have been sidelined, and for a good reason, preserving my capital and waiting for this to pass. Now, even though we were above the daily pivot open, which is always you're looking to buy if that is the case, because of this sharp reversal right at the daily open, I didn't have a chance to get in. It was too late to go long. And I'm glad I skipped the trade, because otherwise price would keep falling. You would have your stops here, which eventually got taken out by this wick. But it chopped up and down. Sure, there is some good directionality here in terms of distance, 1% to the upside, 1% to the downside, but it's too noisy, and it would have been extremely stressful if you were to treat this as any other normal day for you as a MarketSpy, as a system trader. And so knowing when to skip is a very good trading hygiene, in my opinion, that everybody should follow. And so now, for whatever reason, we started to consolidate here, not making any advancements. And that's because we've fallen into the weekend window. So this here pretty much was your Friday, this is your Saturday, and this is Sunday, according to the Asian markets, or where the CPR opens on the global Bitcoin market. So the daily candle opens here in Asia, where the sun rises, and that makes sense. This is a daily open, a new beginning, and then things happen later on in the day. And so we have stayed below, and currently the sentiment here, we're bearish, but we are being compressed by these extremely thin levels here. And so my point is that if you were to skip this, this is a good call. This is a good trade, skipping and not doing anything. Because then otherwise you're dealing with a whole bunch of stress here. And even touching this CP, central pivot level here, was not guaranteed. Touching any one of these levels is not guaranteed because the compression here is so thin that anytime price goes down, it'll probably be picked up by a market maker to bring it back up to the yellow line, get rejected, and bring it back to the BC line. Those are high probability levels. And so you have very little space between the daily open and a potential reversal point. So extremely dangerous, extremely stressful if you don't know what you're doing. But okay, so today the compression is super high and we are going to pop out of this formation come Monday or maybe even later on today. And I think because we're below in the bearish territory, but we have no momentum supporting that, we have no pressure calling it to go down further, I think we're gonna have a what they call a BART formation reversal. Now, Bart from The Simpsons, his head looks like this. And so I expect price to come back up to this point and maybe clear R2, R3, and R4 to see if we can retest the trend line break that we have witnessed over here at this point. So this chart is inverted. For those of you guys that are confused, I tend to invert my charts because it's just easier to process this psychologically. And so otherwise it looks like this. And so you can see there's very little push to the downside and sellers are becoming exhausted. So it can be assumed that if price retakes this level, and this being a flat baseline of sorts, the daily open, and we have two consecutive ones, and we're barely hovering below. It is bearish technically, but we have to apply some reasoning here and say that this technicality that is super bearish is not causing hunger in traders to keep selling. And so I believe they're exhausted and we're posting relative higher lows. And so there's a potential for a reversal here. So watch out for that. So that's for your intraday guys. Your trade for tomorrow is probably to the upside. Nothing is guaranteed, but the likelihood of that happening is ever increasing as we spend time consolidating here, not really making any progress to the downside aggressively. So we'll see what happens here, but the way it's going to go to the projected this advancement here, it has to happen in a way where you're going to have something like this and like this. You're going to have a sharp reversal to pick up some liquidity interest and then bring it all the way up. So the other thing that can happen here is we can have up, down, and then consolidate even further. So that is also a possibility. So I'm not trading this until we resolve, but I'm becoming a bit more bullish now after all these dumps, multiple legs to the downside. But even if it goes up, there's a potential for it to be the perfect entry to continue then selling Bitcoin further down. So we have some levels on macro. And I'm just going to switch over to quad setup over here. It's a bit messy, but I'll try my best to illustrate some key points over here that you need to be aware of. So first of all, the rejection happened at the this is a yearly setup, I believe. DSR is set to yearly. That's right, 12 months. And so we're at the half point, 6 months in, and then the second months and the third months are most likely going to be down months. And we talked about this particular chart in my previous video titled Bitcoin Bear Market is Here. And so this projection here may take some time. It is not a guarantee that this will happen swiftly. We kind of reached our checkpoint here, and so a decline is certainly expected. But in terms of like what I just talked about on the intraday, looking at lower time frame setup, this is what you're looking at. But then eventually, so it's going to look like a tiny little blip on higher time frames. So, and the way it's going to look on intraday is something like this. Just quite ridiculous, you know, if you're trading this. You have to be really on point in terms of your understanding what it is that you're looking at. So, trend line broken, this leg. The only hope here now is that we somehow reverse and cause this to be one of those, you know, chart patterns that we see often on Bitcoin that we end up calling a fake out or a bear trap. And so price reverses, traps everyone in this consolidation. This is why it's important not to trade this consolidation, especially if you're betting more down after two significant legs, three, I would say, even up the top. But yeah, the rejection came from at around this point. We consolidated. This pattern failed. Usually it goes up from here and then goes down, but fear took over and price started declining rapidly. Then we consolidated, and this is where we faced weekly resistance. And to illustrate that, you can turn on DSR over here and see how the weekly resistance. Let me see if I can actually. Is there a shortcut for this? Yeah. So this is where the rejection happened, and I thought that we were going to run this through, create maybe another fake out, but it was very accurate. I don't think it's possible to outsmart our indicators even by institutions. They're very obedient. There's a breakout, there's a breakout. If there's a rejection, it's a solid rejection. And so we broke this down, came back, swept this level, and we're yet to tap into this level. And it's so close. I think that if we go down slightly just to 108,300, this would be a good relative higher low for it to reverse and start creeping up. So expect it to maybe come down to 108,200. This is what I'm waiting for. And this would be maybe the perfect bid area to play a little sharp reversal all the way up to 111, 112 region. And so we can see that this compression can easily do so. Let it come back down a little bit over here. Maybe it will sweep the lows. I'm not sure, but I doubt it. But it comes down here, sweeps the lows. We buy into it, and it goes up for the next week and stays chopping to the creeping up to the upside towards 112, towards this trend line. And we'll see if it holds or it actually breaks above it and traps everybody who's short over in this area. So that is very interesting. And that's the weekly setup. You have your daily, which is there's a baseline reclaim. So like I said, another push lower and then a sharp reversal. This is a perfect setup for that. Then you have your weekly, and we're basically resting on the weekly pivot open from. Sorry, this is actually a monthly. This is a monthly pivot open. And so if we sweep this one guy right here, like I said, 108, thereabouts, 108,500, and find support in this thick CPR zone, then I think we can bounce back up a little bit and stay in the float mode for the next week or so. Otherwise, immediately on a weekly candle setup plus your monthly, you know, this little pause that I'm talking about here, where price goes down and then comes back up, like all of this, eventually these things are gonna advance. So the ribbon is waiting here regardless, and it's only a matter of time before we tap into that. So overall we're down, but because we have been falling and consolidating for a little while, we expect a little relief rally to the upside in the next week or so. But that's your update. We're still looking extremely bearish. There could be a drop all the way down to 93, which is an immediate buy. For you, you want to be looking into a little bounce from there. There's going to be in multitudes of thousands of dollars worth of price action for you to enjoy. But then eventually, 2006, I think there's huge potential here, where we go down to the low 70s and high 60s. So that's a buy point. So what I have right now is I have my spot ladder spread out all the way down to this level, and I'm buying Bitcoin with that ladder. Just enough so I can maybe benefit from price appreciation naturally without using derivatives. But intraday, these are my thoughts. This is what I'm looking for next week. And once again, all the analysis that we talked about and discussed in the previous video titled Bitcoin Bear Market is here. Has been on point. It has been happening. It will continue to keep on happening. And all you got to do is just maneuver around these price swings as best as you can, avoid these consolidations. And if you join our Discord, I do share my thoughts every once in a while. And I say, I'm skipping this because of such and such. And it's a good idea to align with that and compare that against your own analysis and see where we are on our opinion on price action as individuals. It is extremely important if you're not married to the price action, meaning if you're not invested in Bitcoin, you remain absolutely neutral and unaffected by any of this up-down action. Your judgment is clear. You're not clouded by your investment, and that is an absolute total freedom that a trader can experience when he's not attached to any one of these assets. I am fully or partially in USDT, and this allows me to basically spot opportunities where I can either increase my Bitcoin holdings or trade USDT according to daily setups using MarketSpy trading system. So that's your update. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and share the video with your friends. Until then, I'll keep you posted as usual. Keep your eyes on the prize and follow along. See you guys.